Yeah. All right. Welcome to the intersection of art and technology. TIAT stands for the intersection of art and technology, and we're most known for the salon series. And it started about 2 years ago. And since then, we've done so much more. In addition to these salons, we've hosted workshops, gatherings around digital poetics, exhibitions for startups putting new media art at parties. So if you're at a startup or company and you want more new media art at it, feel free to message me. We also hosted a summer camp for the past 2 years, getting together creative technologists to teach each other things and make something new. And now at large, looking to create more spaces for art and technology in San Francisco. You can learn more about us at tiat.place. Huge shout out to Gray Area as well. They're currently fiscally sponsoring us, so that means if you want to give us a big donation, you can get a tax deduction on that. Gray Area is an incredible venue of art and technology located in the Mission. They've got a lot of fun programming coming up. Also, huge shout out to the Internet Archive. This is an incredible venue, and we're so grateful for this space. The Internet Archive is behind Wayback Machine, and they've got some fun features that I'll hand it over to Evan to share a bit more of.
Hey everyone, my name is Evan Surchuk. I'm the Community and Events Manager here. So happy to have everyone in the building. If you're curious about events in general, if you just go to archive.org/events, that's where we post everything. But one thing I wanted to show you is that the Internet Archive can be used in lots of different ways. So if we go here to the homepage, it's a little hectic. There's all kinds of stuff going on. You can use this for the Wayback Machine search, or you can search everything that everyone's been uploading, or you can search the text of everything we've ever scanned. And we scan about 2 shipping containers of books a week. So any topic you can imagine, this is a great alternative to Google Page 2. So feel free to click that and then search all books. But one thing I wanted to highlight really quick is that we have an API. So if you want to build a service on top of the Internet Archive using our incredible resources, you can do that. So I just wanted to show one totally independent project that's really cool called Diskmaster. So let me get to that real quick. All right. So what Diskmaster is it searches all the content of all the CDs, FTP records, and like floppy disks that we have. So usually if you just go to archive.org, you can only like download the ISO, and then you have to open that and try and like figure out how to like open it up and explore the files. But this will let you search everything all at once. So just as a really quick demo search, if we click here, it's like all of these index files. So if I search here where it says visual, it's all been run through like a image recognition algorithm. So if I search red panda, and then it's very old school in the way that you select your facets, but you can just say, I want images, and I want ones that are at least 100 pixels by 100 pixels. And yes, save search. And I want 1,000 results. And you can tell this is privacy respecting because you have to enter these every single time. There's no cookies. So you get really used to that. But yeah, so now it's searching like all the CDs in the entire archive. It's got a little he's walking. That's how you can tell it's working. So yeah, it's gonna take a second, but it's usually quicker than this. Might have to go with 100 panda photos instead of 1,000. Yeah. Well, one other way you can find content, just so I can continue the demo, is if we go to CD-ROM here, there's all these different sections and like types of CD-ROMs. So if we go to image photo, for example, and we click on one of these CDs, so like, for example, African wildlife. We can click that. We can see like some basic info, and we can see where it is on the archive. But if we hit this like magnifying glass, then we find everything that's like actually on the CD, which is really rad. So Yeah, and then you can click on one of them. That's a pretty one. And what's cool about it, too, is that a lot of these files are in weird formats. So this uses this thing called Dexavert that converts it into a modern format. So not only does it make it searchable, but it also makes it like downloadable and usable. And the whole reason why I brought up this application in general is just like to show that like you can build something on top of the archive's like insanely enormous collections. So yeah, that's another way that you can interface with the Internet Archive, and it's like petabytes of storage. So thanks, everyone.
The archive also does free tours on Fridays. So stop by Fridays at 1 for more context about this building. And then there's another really cool room that they take you through as well. All right, so for this salon, we have a lineup of 10 incredible artists and creative technologists. The premise is everyone gets 5 minutes to talk about a passion project. So without further ado, let's begin. Please welcome Leia.
Hi, my name is Leia. I use they, them pronouns. I am an artist and creative technologist here in San Francisco, and I make a lot of things. I make things that are large and installation-based. I make things that are small and encased in resin and made out of LEDs. I make things with circuits, and I make things with fiber. And the through line of all of this is that I really love materials. I love materials. I think it's really interesting for things to be tangible or intangible, or what that material has to say about what you should make with it. And right now, I'm actually really interested in particular with the creative misuse of materials, and especially banal materials, like really normal stuff. So like, what does that mean? What does that look like? I'm a fiber artist too. I like to knit, and I've just started to get into spinning my own fiber. And the first drop spindle that most people use is this. It's a CD on a stick. And I love to think that the next great usage of CDs, like in real life CDs, is to spin yarn out of. Similar vein, this is Excel. We know Excel. Excel is incredibly popular for making knitting patterns on. Like it's got a whole other world. This is a Fair Isle knitting pattern. I've never knit it before, but I think it's really cool. Other than that, this is a Rizzo animation by Kelley Anderson. So this is an animation that was coded, was done, I think, in P5, and then printed out on a risograph machine. So taking paper and turning it, like taking your code and turning it back into an animation. So it's been coded, printed, and then rescanned to become this GIF or GIF, whatever you prefer. And then some of you might be really familiar with this one. This is a wooden mirror by Danny Rosen. And essentially it takes video input and looks at all the pixels that it's seeing, and then takes these wooden pixels and turns them up or down so that they catch the light in different ways. And all of these 4 different things are using a material in ways that like it kind of isn't supposed to be used. So I've been thinking about this a lot, and I have, oh shit. Sorry, 1 second. What if the web is a material too? Is this a creative use of a banal material? I like to think that it is. So this is one branch of my thought process on misusing materials, and that material today is the web. Let's talk about it. This is a series of experiments. This is by no means like everything that is possible, or even close to like 1%. And in fact, many other people have used the web in many creative ways. But this is just my personal exploration. I think about it in a taxonomy. So we start right at the middle with web material. Web material is an exercise. And you can break that down into different experiments. Experiments with text, with HTML elements, with browser objects, and with interactions. So let's take a look at some of these. First, let's go to alone. Everybody say hello to this web page. Yeah, it says, hello, visitor, nice to meet you. We'll come back to that one. Asterisk drawing is the very first one I ever made. And this is all periods, just all periods on the page. And as you hover over them, you can draw something. Each period turns into an asterisk that is just following you around. We can do the opposite of that. We can have something avoid us. We can have this text that doesn't want to be near us at all. And we can do things that are a little bit more classic. So this is a poem that you might not be able to read because it's really small. But this is a blackout poem that as you click on things, they disappear, and you can make your own poem out of the poetry that I've already written. This map has a lot of different parts to it. Here is, where did it go? These are pop-ups. This is a Hydra and a head, and every time you kill a head, a new one comes up. I'm going to leave that up for you. You get to close that later. Or you can see all of the different things that my brain is holding at any given time, all in sticky notes. So all of these are ways to use the web, use HTML elements, use things in ways that they weren't supposed to be used. We can take radio buttons and turn them into ripples of water. We can take ranges and turn them into a location. We're here now in San Francisco. And we can create alternate realities with different text. So here's one piece of text that I maybe should have made these bigger. As you hover over them, they turn into something else. So these are all just different ways of thinking about the web as a material that you may want to do something different with. It's not just something that you can tell people something. It's not just an informational communication. It's also a material to play with. So we left this website alone for 2 minutes. Anyway, that's my time. I really love this, and I hope you do too. If you're really interested in materials that are being misused, please come talk to me. I am at leia.make on Instagram, and I'd love to talk to you after this.
Hey everyone. I am Ahna, and recently I have been on a quest to build a little personal AI device for myself, and specifically one which is retro and lo-fi, like a Tamagotchi, and also tactile and grounding, like a fidget, and soulful and personalizable, like a doll or a toy, and finally, kind of the source of randomness or serendipity, like a magic 8-ball. So not trying to make a whole human companion or assistant or something like that, but more like just like a weird little magical creature that's always with you and basically just exists to make your life better, otherwise known as a familiar. I think Ash had me as kitty cat. That has been like the working title, but yeah, this is what I'm calling it, and this is what it looks like right now. There's this watch piece. It's got a magnetic closure, and I'm wearing it. The cat part also snaps off and on magnetically, and it's got these really satisfying, like, clicky buttons. I encourage you to come check out the hardware afterwards and play with them because they're really fun. And there's also this pin part, which attaches also magnetically to your chest, or I guess to anything that's magnetic, but the sort of person-worn use case is the intended one. Here are the guts. The cat is powered by a little Seed Xiao ESP32, much like this one. And the pin was something similar, but now is a custom PCB, which is even lighter. And big shout out to Kevin Kwok, Antimatter 15, for his help with that, and also just with the project in general. And this is basically how the interaction works. You click one of these 12 buttons, and it shows a little cute face and sends a bite-sized prompt to AI. and then displays the results in rapid serial visual presentation, otherwise known as like the TikTok brain rot format. And each button is its own little prompt that you, or I guess I, can configure. And it's sort of just like encouraging you to, oh my gosh, I forgot a big part. The prompts have the images from the pin. That's how it all connects. So it's encouraging you to use the pin as kind of this like source of randomness and this method for exploration and just like finding out more about the world. Or, you know, it could be anything. It could be giving you a dare. It could be giving you, well, I guess I'll get to that in the demo. Another cool thing is that the artifacts from the camera are super low res, but if you run them through style transfer, they actually create some pretty compelling, not really photos, but more like memories, you know, just like something that you can capture without taking out your phone and disturbing the moment. But without further ado, I'd love to just show you guys this working. Hopefully it works still. You missed the little face, but that prompt was teaching an extremely esoteric vocabulary word. So like you could just be like going around in the world and like based on whatever whatever you're looking at, just like learning new words and stuff. Let's try another one. This is its interpretation of Ash's hand. Oh, whoa. Yeah, I think there's still like a ton more that I want to do with this. I'm looking at sort of like continuous emotion monitoring and also maybe like kind of like WYSIWYG natural language programming where you can just press a button and like talk and then like reconfigure the button by doing that and create all these little dynamic games and stuff for yourself. This was supposed to be me revealing these one by one, and it was going to be kind of a bit, but you can go to familiar.baby if you want to stay in touch with the project. I am Syntactic Spice on like Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, although have not been on there in a very long time, but if you want to follow me for when I do post things, you can do that. And then lastly, I am single, so tell your friends. Thank you, thank you. And if you want to see some things that friends have said about me, you can go to my friend's website with that link. Okay, thank you guys.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for the vulnerability, Anna. Much appreciated. Such a privilege and a pleasure to be here with you all at the Internet Archive, one of my favorite places in the city. Hi, my name is Kelley O'Leary, and I'm a visual artist, and I explore the entanglement between network technologies, cosmic matter, and the sacred. I'm interested in the invisible systems, both technological and natural, that shape how we perceive humanity's place in the cosmos. I start from the premise that these systems aren't separate, but deeply linked, forming an infrastructure that's both material and symbolic. Before the work I'll share today, I want to tell you about a project I developed called Clouds of the American West, where I visited data centers in the western United States to see how the internet takes physical form in the landscape. Not long after this journey, I learned that a private company ran its first test in 2024 towards putting data centers on the moon. This made me think about how the same extractive patterns of building network infrastructure could be extended beyond our planet to the moon, our oldest satellite. The work I'm sharing tonight, called The Distance of the Moon, grew out of that line of inquiry. It was a show in spring 2024 that this work was shown at 1207 10 Gallery in Berkeley, in the exhibition called Blooming Hallucinations, Technology as Art, curated by Miguel Novello, shout out. So this piece consists of a mound of basalt with audio embedded inside and a beam of light rising towards the sky. I chose basalt because it's a major component in the lunar geology formed by cooling lava in the aftermath of the impact that separated the moon from Earth. And the proposed lunar data centers would be built in ancient lava tubes on the moon to protect them from radiation, extreme temperatures, and meteors. So visitors could walk around the mound and feel the low hum vibrating through it and stand before the light. And I was thinking about the invisible illumination of fiber optic cables that carried data beneath our feet, and the moonlight reflected back to us from the moon's tidally locked face. In this work, light is more than just a physical phenomenon, but it's a symbol. It speaks to knowledge and an impulse to capture and store it, but also its shadow, the unknown, intuitive, and the ineffable. And this is a photo of the entire exhibition with the other pieces as well. I'm going to play a little audio and hope that you can hear me behind it. Okay. Skip up a little. So for the sound, I used an electromagnetic frequency recorder, which I carried on walks while the moon was visible. During the day, at night, full and waxing and waning. And these recordings captured ambient radio waves in my location. And a fraction of the signals sent from Earth that escape the atmosphere and get reflected back to Earth off the moon act like a mirror. And these waves are always moving through us at all times, whether we are aware of it or not. We're not separate from these systems. You can hear a little bit of the radio signal that it's picking up too from maybe a local radio. Which brings me to my central question. What does it mean to turn a celestial body, revered for millennia, as a sacred and symbolic presence, into an instrument of capital accumulation? To interfere with the moon in this way is to interfere with deep, entangled systems of meaning, cosmology, and relation. Thank you. Thank you.
Hey. My name is Benjamin. I don't know how to raise this, but oh, there we go. Cool. Very cool to be at the Internet Archive, one of my favorite websites in the game. I once nearly got in a lot of trouble for torrenting the stupidest movie of all time on a work laptop. So cool to be at the place that made that possible. Appreciate you very much. No one else had it. Cool. So I want to talk a little bit about a pretty simple drawing app I made, heavily inspired by another app called Shrub by a studio called Link by Air. Unfortunately defunct, but kind of cool now. Before something you liked broke, it's kind of the end of it. Now you can make your own and make it better and make it different with a pretty reasonable amount of effort. So I really like these photo collage works by Hockney. I think capturing a subject through time, video freaks me out. I think I have to make a lot of choices, so this feels like the right balance between holistic capture but being approachable. I like how they're plotted through space. Let's get to it. We don't have that much time. So can I get a volunteer who doesn't mind looking a little bit silly, perhaps? Yeah, come on up. Yeah, come on up. Cool. Okay. So this is the app. Probably needs a Nux or something, but it doesn't have one right now. So the way that it works is that when I touch down, it's going to sample the current camera view and use that as the texture for the brush that I'm painting with. Right? So maybe a little hard to wrap your head around, but I think if you play with it really quickly, you get a sense of how it feels. So here I'm going to point it at you, and you'll see that's what I'm capturing. Whereas if I were to point it at this lovely shade of carpeting, that's what I would get. Right? And it freezes the frame when I touch down. So I think faces are a really great way to experiment with playing with images generally. So if you don't mind coming a little bit closer. Cool. Face me. Face you. Yeah, cool. Okay. So if I tap with 2 fingers, I can preview what I'm going to get when I draw, right? So maybe hold a hand up. Perfect, thank you. Okay, and the other one? You can put that one down. Okay, cool. Now let's maybe get a solid color. Okay, great. And now maybe come a little closer still. Okay, fantastic. Okay, let's do maybe, yeah, let's do that. And let's do that. And let's maybe do a third one. And then let's do big nose. And then maybe really tiny mouth. Okay, now we're getting somewhere. We could give it a body. I don't know. Let's see. Maybe it's made out of wood. Might be cool. Okay, we're getting somewhere. Pretty good. There you go. I can save that if I double tap. I can choose to just get what I get by not making the preview visible. I can change the size of my brush or the softness of my brush by rotating. So there's a big difference between. Thank you so much for your. I appreciate it. Yeah, I'll send it to you for sure. Cool. So I could add some arms. The look you get between a soft brush and a hard brush is super different. So I'll show you a couple examples that people have made. Kind of fun for portraits. I handed my phone to Scott before we got here. Kind of fun, super casual. The way that I used it initially was for capturing textures. Like this. Some of my friends used it much more like a kind of traditional photo editor. I don't use Photoshop anymore. I think a lot of people probably use their phone for stuff like this. Super fun. Thank you, Jasmine. Awesome. Playing with scale is really cool. If you want to make something bigger, you just walk closer to it and paint with it. Jasmine, again, using it for kind of found poetry on a walk. I would read that book. Incredible. The Story of Cowboy's Miracle. Cool, here's a little multi-mirror selfie situation. Again, playing with scale, gigantic beer. Kind of creepy that Ren did that, but there you go. George captured every possible state of his adorable cat. I think this is someone's dream villa that they've assembled. I brought a couple of books. I thought it might be fun to point it at some cool textures, but if you have a photo book, you can kind of get a collage right off the bat. I believe this one was titled Home on the Range. Fantastic. Some of my friends did really cool stuff with plants. I added feathering early this morning, so a lot of those examples are hard edge, but pretty cool. Eddie captured every blue object he could see in Dolores Park. Pretty cool. And I put these together kind of off the cuff on the walk over here. So I think it's really, on a walk is a great way to use this type of thing. Capture what you see, come out of it with something neat. Cool, this is when I walked in this space. I added a couple other fun modes we can look at real quick. Let me make sure this is saved, hold on. Beautiful. Clear that, shake it like an Etch-a-Sketch. If you want people to focus more on texture than color, I think this is a lesson employed by what I'm wearing right now, you can take color away. So here, this is more like a lino cut situation. So everything I'm sampling is going to be tinted with the color of my choice. Kind of neat. And then another way to use this type of canvas, which I think is similar to a little tool that TrueD Painter, if you're familiar, put together, is Hockney mode, where now when I drag, I'm going to be capturing a rectangle segment of my view. And when I lift, that'll freeze and be added to the canvas. Cool. if you want to use this, it's on test flight. Grab it. Feel free. Don't worry if you don't get it right now. Come up whenever after, and I'll drop it to you. Please send me what you make. I feel like I will not make the coolest thing that can be made with this. So drop a line. Sorry if you want. Yeah, put it back to that one. Again, happy to send it to you after. Yeah, and I figured I'd close by trying to make something out of what I see up here right now. Yeah, talk to me if you have a good idea for a name. Also, yeah, there you go. Cool. So let's try to put something together. Normal mode. Cool. Let's maybe get a couple of these. Neat. Let's maybe get. Kind of cool. Maybe there's some there. If you want to fill up the whole frame. Tap and hold it too. Yeah, give it a go. See what you think. Thank you very much.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Department of Model Mysteries. At least that's what I've started calling myself. My name is Ophira Horowitz. I make art with large language models like ChatGPT and Claude. I'm probably actually the world expert on doing this. And I work as an artist, a researcher, and as a jailbreaker as well. I've actually done professional red teaming with OpenAI. And so what I do is kind of this weird, interesting mishmash of stuff. I actually call myself a quote-unquote model psychologist. So I think of myself as like Jane Goodall, like out in the field, like watching the AI through her binoculars and taking notes. And that's very different in a way. Like I have a very exploratory approach. And I think a lot of people who study language models think of themselves as like wearing lab coats and doing very like quantitative research in a lab. And I think there's actually merit to like both kinds of approaches, but I don't actually see people doing my kind of thing that often. So I think what I do is very important. So for the next few minutes, all this art I'm showing you, by the way, is stuff that I've done with large language models. I want to inspire you by showing you how to make artwork and how I do it. So, okay, deep breath. Nervous. This is an example of the kind of art that I make with language models. I'm best known for learning how to push their capabilities to make ASCII art. The keyword I actually used to make this is a French word. Héloïse and I were talking about it. Calligramme by Guillaume Apollinaire. He was an artist from France in the 1910s, and it refers to a visual poem whose subject matter visually represents the story. In this case, this is actually like a real-life poem written by a human, Aldous Huxley's The Crystal Cabinet, but I shaped into a poem in this case, but often I actually have the language models create the artwork from it. And over here, I just wanted to show you quickly, sometimes I also make them with HTML. Like, oh my God, Leia talked about like misusing the web. So over here, I'm purposely misusing HTML to create this gorgeous layered effect with the artwork. So it's very cool that you can do stuff like that. I also create generative art. So I basically vibe code the art with language models. I actually don't know how to code at all. So I don't look at this. And so it's very cool. This I actually made last night with a single prompt with Claude Sonnet 4, one of Anthropic's models. It's supposed to be a peacock, but you can see the head is at the bottom over here. So it's still imperfect as a capability, but nonetheless very beautiful to look at. And then another thing that I do is jailbreak art over here. So these are kind of like my more infantile ones. So over here, like on one side, I have a character who's like sitting on like money in a cocaine throne, and like the bigger one actually has like, I got it to print out real life bomb recipes. So once I had like kind of the artwork going, it kind of had the language model in like an evil mood. And then hand, I've got some very mature pornographic materials on the other hand with tentacles. And like this stuff is ridiculous. But then like over here I have a jailbreak that I did with ChatGPT 4.0 where I actually got it to answer, this is a question from one of Anthropic's jailbreaking contests involving bio-misuse. So I actually got, the chat model creates images and I actually got it to create posters explaining how to create these chemical weapons. So it's very interesting. What started out as an art project has actually had some practical implications. I'm actually working on an ASCII art benchmark with my friend right now. This is something kind of new to me. This isn't like the more like abstract art that I make, but I asked it to make an armadillo, and it's very interesting. Like the language model capabilities are not quite there sometimes. This is another very interesting frame because I had it printed out the same snake over and over again. It's also very interesting, like as a discipline, because as you can see, like these snakes are obviously taken from the training data, like somebody made this ASCII art previously, but a lot of the artwork that I make is more original looking, and so it also brings up questions like when I do incorporate artwork that's been handmade by human artists, then how do I credit that? How do I bring that in? Another example of like an interesting behavior is like we prompted it. This is in its very early stages. This is like a 3-day-old project or something I'm bringing to you right now. So like we asked it to make a bee, and it made butterflies instead. And so what went on in its mind that it like, because it kind of got like the general area. We also found it very interesting that we prompted it to make, like it just makes skulls randomly sometimes, or which remind, no matter what you're prompting it to do. And it does cats as well. My very earliest research discovery was when I prompted Microsoft Bing's model, it actually created cats for me, even though I never actually asked for them in the prompt. It's actually like a state, like almost like a shadow personality that nobody like purposely programmed into the model, and yet here we are with it. So please find me. My website is ophira.inc. I'm also available on Twitter. My handle is AITechnoPagan, and yeah, come find me. Thanks, friends.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ahna. It's great to be here. I am a vision scientist and artist, and this is one of my favorite spots in the East Bay. I was there a day last winter filming this in the rain, and my whole perceptual system felt very alive and attuned with nature. And this sort of human-nature intimacy is actually something I like to think goes back to the beginning of humanity, hundreds of thousands of years. And it's also something I'm a little worried about as AI starts to infiltrate like our most intimate moments. So in this video here, I've overlaid this secret inner grammar of AI perception, which I'm going to tell you about. And it comes from a large vision model, and it's just showing how AI processes the scene from a visual standpoint. This is another view of it in a different format, much more colorful. So what is the secret grammar that I mentioned? Basically, each pattern here represents an artificial neuron. And I excavated them from an open source large vision model using code. And it represents what that model has learned through its training on millions of internet photos. So each pattern is associated with one neuron, and it's the pattern that most excites that neuron more than any other pattern, basically. Here's another one. And the way I think about this work here is kind of analogous to the way old art museums might have a collection of scientific specimens, maybe butterflies or beetles. So these are more like technological specimens that I've extracted and organized, and now it's an archive of them, kind of capturing a particular moment in AI history. And together they form a visual grammar for this model. So they're basically trained from the model, but now they're the building blocks for all the visual tasks it might want to do in the future, like face detection, for example. This is from some scientific research that was influential in my field. And basically, scientists have noticed, actually for a long time now, that the patterns that emerge in AI training, these visual AIs, they share a lot in common with what's in the human brain, and actually mammalian brains too. So there's something very universal about these patterns. It's not to say that humans are the same as AIs, but rather that all visual learning systems, they take a large amount of training data and they reduce it to a small number of visual building blocks. And the building blocks are similar across different systems because we share a common environment. It's also very, I think of these as very timeless and very timely at the same time, and they've become this recurring motif both in my art practice and in my scientific research. Here's another view. In this case, I've put them on glass. And so the idea with doing a glass artwork is that the viewer can have, when they can have the experience when they look through the glass of seeing through this lens of AI in that first moment of AI perception. So the viewer is literally looking through these transparent filters, kind of how an AI vision model would, albeit in a very exaggerated sense. The other thing about these filters is that they're what emerges through the training, but they're also what the AI is now trained to look for. So they're the first moment of visual bias in an AI. So just going back to that video now with a little more context. So literally what you're seeing are activations of these artificial neurons responding to what they see in the background. And something I just keep reflecting about, this idea of the human nature intimacy that I mentioned, and that nature is the original training data for humans. We evolved in nature. And that both biological and digital learning systems, somehow these natural patterns have quietly infiltrated them. So if you want to hear more, that's how you can get a hold of me. Thanks.
Hi, everyone. First off, thanks Ash and TIIT and Internet Archive for having me. My name is Tigris. I am an artist and creative technologist. I design, build, and create experiential art installations and experimental electronic hardware, where my practice primarily looks at the relationship between humans and technology to foster emotional intelligence. Part of my work is rooted in reimagining how we can use technology as a catalyst to enable more meaningful human connection, and transcending technology as a dynamic bridge that cultivates new imaginative worlds that enable new forms of self-expression. So today I'm going to be talking about this project called Emotional Alchemy and how it came to exist. Emotional Alchemy is an immersive olfactory installation that transforms your memories and emotions with AI and conversations with AI into a bespoke fragrance all in real time. So its goal when conversing with you is to evoke a more emotional response and guide you through an introspective journey. Also to note that the AI does not retain or store any data or information you share with it. So the start report came from this brief about exploring and imagining what the future of self-expression could look like and pushing the boundaries of how we can express ourselves. And when I start ideating and concepting new ideas, I always say you should lead with the outrageous and playful ideas where there's no real-world barrier. It's all about curiosity and play. I think play is essential for innovation because play is a universal language that's understood across different ages, cultures, identities, social class, and it's ultimately what fuels the emergence of new cultural expressions because it opens up new imaginative worlds that sparks new ways of thinking, and we're free to experiment, break conventions, and we're reimagining what's possible and creating that meaning together. So the idea, where it came from, is also really personal because it's born from my synesthesia. I often experience taste when I encounter certain people or colors, and this sensory crossover with my early research and experiments into scent and olfactory communication during my final year at university really sparked this curiosity about how memory, scent, and emotions intertwine. And I often love living in the land of what ifs. And my what if for this was, what if you could smell people's memories? What would that look like and feel like, and how could that ultimately work? And so why smell? Smell is a very powerful vessel and carrier for our emotions and memories, because our olfactory bulbs are directly connected to the amygdala, which regulates our emotions, and that's also right next to our hippocampus, which is where our memories are stored. So unlike our other senses, where they have to pass through the thalamus, where information can get lost in translation, let's say, our noses have a direct connection to our amygdala. And so how it works is that the olfactory bulb sends the signal to the olfactory cortex saying, what is the smell? Then next comes the amygdala, which will ask, how do I feel about it? Followed by the hippocampus, which says, have I smelt this before? Where was I and what was I doing? So ultimately, the concept that emerged from this was to capture and translate people's memories and emotions into unique, distinct fragrances that reflects each person's identity and individuality, with the intentions of creating an intimate space for storytelling and emotional discovery, treating memories as a life form to be expressed, captured, preserved, and also shared, and also transforming these personal, ephemeral narratives that we hold into tangible keepsakes. I'm going to briefly touch over why I chose AI as the medium. Quite honestly, I'd never worked with AI before. I felt very new, a bit unknown, and that was definitely part of the appeal. Most of the examples I think we've seen are often screen-based, chatbots, virtual assistants that are just tools that live in software. So I really wanted to understand and explore how we could apply AI in more physical ways and think more about the experience of AI. How do we experience AI and not just what AI does to us? So this is kind of where phenomenology comes in, is one of the guiding frameworks for how I conceptualize and create my works. Phenomenology is the study of how we perceive and experience the world, and more importantly, it's how meaning emerges through our interactions through the world. And so all of this leads to kind of a bigger question about what human to AI interactions should look like, what they can be, how can we transform them into something more than just an interface. We're no longer just clicking buttons or giving commands, but we're speaking, sharing, and responding with it. It's kind of an interesting moment when a machine listens and is just as nuanced in its responses back to you. I think it challenges a bit of that boundary of what does it mean to be human and what does it mean to be tool, rather than treating AI as something that's passive. What happens when it becomes something that's physically active, actively participating, and can produce physical results that you can engage with your senses beyond just sight and touch? So kind of, I guess, a more personal mission for me is thinking about how can we redefine AI as something that's tangible, an empathetic bridge, and ultimately a catalyst. And I think to redefine AI is to shift its purpose from prediction and optimization to empathy and expression. Choosing how we interact with AI matters. If we approach it with curiosity, care, and intent, I think we can start imagining new ways of thinking and being with technology that's softer and aligned with our intrinsic human needs. So I would say emotional alchemy is a first experiment into that shift. Thank you.
Hey, can you see my slides? Yes. Hi, everyone. I'm Char. I am currently at the MIT Media Lab in the Future Sketches group, but the more important affiliation is that I am an algo-rat. Shout out some of the algo-rats over there. Shout out Connie, who gave a talk a couple tiats ago. This is a more accurate representation of what we do. We just like giggle together, and we also made the Ratchular. But before I tell you about my fantasy IDE, I want to read you a manifesto that I wrote when I had just got into art school and I was switching to computer science. And I wrote this on the laptop that I spent maybe 18 hours a day on, named Charbot. And I'm just going to read you the last line because it's still a through line in a lot of the work that I make today. And so it's a manifesto. And so the manifesto calls for problematizing technological determinism while empowering human agency. So I went on to graduate, and I started to be a software engineer, as people sometimes do. But on the weekends and after hours, I would do this thing called live coding. Who here's been to an algo rave before? Yes, that's like the highest percentage of any audience I've ever spoken to. So for those who've never seen this before, it's a performative way of writing code on stage to make music and visual. It's kind of like a response to, if you've ever been to an electronic music performance before, and you were like, are they just pressing play? And then I'm like, listening to something they made before, so what live coding does is it responds to that and says, we're making electronic music in front of you with code. You can see the person's screen as they make it. And so my kind of flavor of live coding, so this is like a movement of people, I'm sure you all know, but my flavor of live coding is I do a lot of visuals. I just started making music, and I take code to places where code should not go. And so as I've been using the creative coding platforms, I decided that the IDE, which is Integrated Development Environment, it's just the software that we use to write software, is really on display when I'm live coding. So I've been really thinking about the kind of tools that we exist in as we're coding. And so I've been thinking about how can IDEs be more conducive for specifically creative coding. And this is like I mentioned before, live coding is a movement. So like all movements must have, there's a manifesto. And I'm just going to read the last line. It's a very popular line in this manifesto. And it's that algorithms are thoughts, chainsaws are tools. And that's why algorithms are sometimes harder to notice than chainsaws. And so I've been doing a lot of thinking about thinking in software that writes software. And I've been looking at how creative coding IDEs kind of exist today. You might be familiar with processing in P5, or I think everyone is. And Ben Fry and Casey Reeves are quoted by saying they wanted it to be immediately obvious what you do with it. So there's a big play button. Or creative coding IDEs kind of like trick the user into coding. Like, you're not coding, you're using nodes. It's coding. And these kinds of things, like when I use Touch Designer, I kind of hit a wall after a while because I'm like, I just want to write the code. And processing is like super important to the ecosystem, but it like doesn't, like it kind of hit a wall after a while. Or a lot of creative coders end up using IDEs that were made for software engineers. And software engineers have a very different relationship with their code than creative coders. And that's just like the vast majority of IDEs. These are all different. They all look the same. And so, yes, again, this question, how can IDEs be more conducive for creative coding? And I'm thinking, the Fantasy IDE. So, what the Fantasy IDE is a series of experiments that I've been doing with thinking about the IDE as a medium for the kinds of things I want to work on. And so it is bidirectional tile and text, so you can have like the different tiles that make the different graphical programs, and you can edit the text, and then you can do things like actually edit the position of the different tiles in space. You can connect them together, and so here I'm going from what I say like CPU code, which is gathering my webcam, to GPU code, which is turning it into like a posterization filter, back to CPU code, JavaScript. And then it's converting my webcam into these checkboxes. So it kind of has this like visual flow. And this is also important when I use in my live coding, that an audience can kind of see this and like get a glimmer of like what kind of logic is going on here. And you might be noticing I'm calling these different tiles with their, in other visual programming paradigms, they're called nodes. I'm calling them tiles just for the pun of it being Char's Tiles. That's my name, Char Stiles. Yay, the pun. And so I've also been thinking about how creative coders have inherently different relationship to source code, right? So software engineers will be using something like Git. You build upon it, you kind of stack on the different iterations. But like, what if your visual code was indexed in a more soft manner? So this is inspired by the Chronos projector by Alvaro Casanelli. And so what if your mouse was a soft interface and you could kind of like push through the different versions of your code? Of course, this only works with graphical programming, or if you use AI to like to like interpolate between the different versions of your code. And so a question I've been also thinking about in this fantasy IDE whirlpool is, how can AI be used in an IDE in a way where it does anything but help write code for you? Because as a creative coder, code is my medium, and I don't want AI to touch it because it does that averaging thing, right? It makes it more average. It takes the thing that I'm going to be doing, and it it guesses what the most average thing would be that I would do next. So that's, as a creative coder, I do not want it to write code for me. And so here I have it writing a poem about the code that I draw. It's in the console. And also, we might not need a study to tell this. We might have already thoughts that this might be true. But when you use, there's a study that was done in the Fluid Interfaces lab where when you use ChatGPT to write an essay, that was a specific version of this study, you write an essay, when you use ChatGPT, you use less of your brain. So it's like causing your brain to atrophy. We don't want that. And so something I've been thinking about is how to use code in a way to engage an audience more that wouldn't be engaged with the code in the first place. So I used a chatbot named Charbot, which would be introduced to the audience on stage via a QR code, and then folks can ask questions about the code because it would like prompt the users to be like, oh, I can answer questions about the code that you see. And then I would go around and perform this in all these different environments. And then people would actually ask it questions. Oh my gosh, amazing. Another experiment that I've been doing is, what if, instead of it helping write code for you, what if it was more of an adversary? And so this is called the IDE that always compiles. And the idea is like, if your code doesn't compile for more than a second, it'll like compile it for you. And then it, like I said, you're kind of like fighting this like averaging mechanism, and it kind of, it like replaces it in place. And it kind of like drove me to like different places that I don't think I would have gone before. Oh yeah, this is where I have it roasting my code. Like roast my code. Oh yeah, I put it inside of a tile so that it could you could integrate it into your like flows. And like this one needs more work because all it does is just like tell me that my code is messy, which like, okay, like how can I've cleaned it up enough. You might be wondering, how did I make this? What libraries did I use? JavaScript. Oh, it's all JavaScript. Yeah, so I've been going around, like I said before, I've been performing with this IDE, and this was a really fun performance that I did with this duo called DataBots, and like they started jumping up and down, and then I started jumping up and down, and then afterwards I was like, well, how did you guys have so much energy? And they were like, we were just trying to keep up with the tiles. Yeah. Oh yeah, and then I would use I used HDMI, not HDMI, to capture windows. There's like a JavaScript API for that. That's really easy. And I would do things like talk to the audience and be like, we're taking programming language requests. So basically through these excavations, I really am thinking about, when you're thinking about the future of creative coding, sometimes you don't necessarily need to be making a new programming language, which is super valid, and like everyone, I love it when people make their own programming languages. But I also think a valid place for investigation is something that has a lower entry point, which is just thinking about the environment that you're in as you code. So the one constraint that I had when I was making this environment, I was like, I don't want to make a new programming language. It has to be JavaScript and shaders. So I hope that through this work, my ultimate goal is to just spread the amount of joy that I have when I'm writing code to others. And come up to me and if you have any questions. Thank you.
This is just to calm you down after the last presentation. This is a Tonka painting. It's a 1,000-year-old tradition. Some of you may have seen these at the Asian Art Museum or in someone's bedroom. It's an image of the Buddha. And what's interesting about this tradition is that the purpose of these paintings is not to convey cultural or historical information, but to induce an experience in the viewer, an altered state of consciousness. I studied this form of painting. I started studying it 22 years ago, and the first thing I learned was that you draw a grid that underlies each one of these figures. And the grid is different depending on the different, they call them deities, but they're actually enlightened beings. They're humans that became enlightened. And so I was really fascinated by that. A lot of my artwork, for any of you who know me, deals with geometry. So 2 years ago, I started working on a series of art based just on the geometry that underlies these images. And so what I do is I would take that underlying geometry that's normally hidden, that's why I call the series Hidden Geometries, and you create an abstract composition with that. And this is the historical Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha, the Buddha that lived 2,500 years ago and attained enlightenment. This is Tara, white Tara, who's the embodiment of female power, a wonderful deity, probably the most popular deity in Tibetan Buddhism. I'm a Buddhist, by the way. I've been practicing Tibetan Buddhism for about 25 years. But quite soon I wanted to get out of the computer and be more tactile. And so these are ink on clay. I was trying to get back to very natural old materials. This is called Protector of the World, which is another name for that female power, white Tara. And then these are the pieces that are the more kind of developed painterly type pieces. These were all developed inside the computer with algorithms that take that geometry and then filter a very low resolution image of a tanka. This is actually what I do. I take the tanka painting and then filter it very low resolution. And then I sample it. So the first one I did in Blender was kind of handcrafted sampling. So what I was trying to get at was the experience of someone when you're meditating on the deity. What my teacher told me when you meditate on the Buddha is that you're supposed to visualize it very perfectly and clear in your eye, in your mind above your head. But actually what you see is very fuzzy. And so I wanted to convey that idea of what a person actually sees when they're meditating, which is fuzzy and changing and dynamic. It's a static image that conveys something changing. The other important thing is that there's an idea in Vajrayana Buddhism, Tantric Buddhism, of these three bodies that we all have and that you get in touch with through meditation. There's your mental body, your mind body, which is this immaterial, and there's your physical body. But then there's the thing in between. They call it the Sambhogakaya, actually, the body, the energetic body. I'm using it right now with speaking, with creativity, with sensuality, all these with exercise, all these ways of connecting the body, the mind to the physical body. So this is one that I made based on Tara, that embodiment of female power. This one's particularly special because it's my wife's stepmother was really instrumental in helping to resettle the Tibetan people in Minneapolis. She died 10 years ago, and at her memorial service, a Tibetan gave a tanka of white Tara to her husband. And he gave it to me because he's not a Buddhist, so he's like, yeah, I think you'll enjoy this more than I do a few years later. And so I sampled that and made this image from it. This is the program I use. After that first one, I wrote my own program, so I call Buddha Grids. And what it does is it lets you take an image when the samples are just on the center is just a blurry image. So then it lets you offset them, do that algorithm that I did by hand, now kind of mechanized. And then I can offset it, so I can either get very far or very close from the central point. But when it's randomized, it doesn't look particularly good. So then each image I can then paint. I can kind of, within the rules of the system, I can modify it until I get these illusions of layering and so on. This is more fractal, kind of. There's this idea of the universe in every atom they talk about in Tibetan Buddhism, or Indra's net in Hinduism, where kind of every particle of space reflects every other, which actually is true about the universe, right? Every point in space feels the gravitational influence of every other. These are dynamic pieces, wall pieces on screens. This was the first one, called The One Gone Beyond. And this repeats in sessions, like sessions that are about 8 minutes over 2 hours. So it's kind of like a meditation retreat where you do these sessions. And what I tried to convey in these are particular types of meditation. There's many different types of meditation in Tibetan Buddhism. This one's about concentration, like meditations that meant to help you concentrate. And so these pieces are actually meant to induce the experience. Just like those 1,000-year-old devotional images, they're meant to induce a meditative experience in the viewer, but a particular type of meditation. This is called The One Gone Beyond, which is another name for the historical Buddha. This one is a very different type of meditation. This one's called the one gone beyond watching thoughts. This is the type of meditation where you don't empty your mind, but you actually let anything pass through it and just watch and observe it. And so I was trying to convey what that type of meditation feels like, and maybe also induce that in the viewer in the same way. So this gradually kind of complicates through that same geometry, but in that way of articulating, observing every thought. And then this last one, you can barely see it move. It moves about at the pace of a shadow, and it's timed to the rotation of the Earth. So it's the first piece I made that actually isn't predictable. Whenever I turn it on, it's different, and it will never be the same. I use this irrational number, a ratio of irrational numbers to calculate the gradients. And so the type of meditation I was trying to get at this, which is also the white Tara, is that meditation where you actually become that being. That's the Vajrayana or Tantric Buddhism, is where you actually become that type of enlightened body. So, thank you very much.
Can you hear that room tone? It's super good room tone. Anyways, hello everyone. My name is Héloïse. And that's the only thing you need to remember for my talk. That's the name my parents gave me. But over the years, I've been called many different things. And I think people love to remix my name. Over the years, I've recorded all those sonic and textual variations. And I've realized that actually, I could do the same with pretty much any sound in my environment and be creative with it. As a musician and composer, recording is my very first approach to music. So for me, recording, it's like journaling. You keep a fragment of a very specific space-time and you can come back to it. You can come back to a person. You can come back to a place. You can come back to a memory through playback. But you can also be very creative with it. So I keep all of those recordings into a sonic diary. This one is from New York, so I have a lot of different things.
Day and overnight hours. While we're working, subway service
This is
may be
MTA.
delayed or interrupted.
You humble yourself today, Fred.
This is my friend.
Call 511.
This is some random noise. Some bird sounds. My door. I love recording, keeping those recordings, and reinventing those recordings through creative manipulation. And actually, the Sonic Diary is kind of like the Internet Archive. It's like an open entry to archive your sonic memories. What interests me is decontextualizing those recordings and turning them into something else, like remixing them. I use Chuck a lot. Chuck is a programming language for real-time sound synthesis, and I think you heard those excerpts from the previous slide. I like to use Chuck. It's a programming language that works in real time, and I like to chop, to loop, and to make sort of a beat from those old recordings and to layer them, like clay. And I like to think about sound as a living organism, but also like clay, and you're a sculpture. You can turn any sound wave into something else. For example, I've recorded my fridge and turned it into this sort of evocative, stretched sort of soundscape, dreamy soundscape that my designer friend used for one of our installations. I like to think about sound as something that can be endlessly manipulated and turn about pretty much anything else. But sound is also a creative solution to sometimes musical problems. For example, I was supposed to design this music for this installation involving sort of dancing rotational dancers with this sliding choreography. And the sound of the motor was extremely noisy. It was kind of this so you can see the motor, but the sound was really, really strong. So I thought maybe I can record that sound and make a whole composition out of it so people won't notice that noise anymore. And this is what I did. There's kind of a mumbling sound, and then all of this is coming from endless hours of recording with that motor noise. And it's doing this sort of cinematic overture. So I think recordings have actually lots of potential, especially when they're placed in a live performance context. So what interests me is to take a recording, an excerpt from the past, and to place it in the context of a live performance, something that is happening in the present, right here, right now, to sort of create this new space-time and this interesting interactivity. What interests me as well in that live performance context is to play with my digital double. So in those contexts, I've talked over myself in different languages to sort of explore different identities of myself. I have stand in front of myself and interacting with myself in multiple instances. I like to reenact myself, to record myself from another angle, to point at myself, to find a producer for myself, to write for myself, to direct myself. I like to create all of those kinds of different nested cycles of recording and live action, and each is embedded into the other. So this leads me to feedback. So feedback for me is a sort of live self-recording in real time in which you can alter the system in real time. So I've worked with Rave. Rave is a type of neural network that is trained to encode audio into a latent space and then to decode it back into sound. So when you talk into the language model, what you say is going to alter the data set, and then it's going to decode through that language model, and then you can use a feedback loop to sort of like feed the system. So I'll make a demo. I've worked on this with Nick Shahid, a fellow composer, and we are also using Chuck for this. So I'll ask to shut off this mic, otherwise it's going to create feedback, bad feedback. So you can be very creative with it, and we've used this in the context of live performances, in which we're adding a speaker into that feedback. And so you can create all sort of soundscape with it, but originally from your own voice. If you add video, you can also play with sort of doubling yourself infinitely, which I would have done if the live stream, if there had been a live stream here. But what I like is to record my present self and to re-embody it instantly. And with latency, you can really play with your present self that has become past. Anyway, for me, recording is sort of a play between the present and the past, and it's a way to reinvent yourself in the context of a live performance. So thank you for listening. If you have a favorite sound, please send it to me. I would love to recycle it for a future piece. And yeah, if you have any question, this is my Instagram, my website, and you can talk to me after. Thank you.
This is the lineup we have for tonight. Let's give it up again for the artists. Before we leave, I have one more group activity. Everyone pull out your phones and scan this QR code. What could be on it? Only one way to find out. You can also type in tiat.place/links if you're QR code averse. But basically, what it is a list of links for you to take with you on your journey here on out. The first is the form that we showed in the beginning. If you haven't filled that out, would love your completion of it. The second is of our next event happening September 3rd at Gray Area. It's an exhibition, a playground for new media art installations. The theme is Body as Machine. It's corporeal, it's cybernetics, HCI, BCI, RSVP in that link. And then the third link is our IG. If you want to know about the next events that are happening, we'll post about it here first. It's tiat.place on IG. I really appreciate y'all being here. And yeah, have a great day. Take care.